Good evening, everyone. Welcome to SITAC 2020 webinar series. This is Rakesh Malakar. I'm a member of SITAC organizing team. Today we have an exciting webinar on UX and UI architecture. And we have our special guest. Her name is Vidhya Sriram. Vidhya is an independent consultant and an experienced UX strategist working with companies that are intentional about the digital transformation. Her area of expertise are customer research and the product strategy. Recently, she has been working with companies to set up and scale customer research program to inoculate empathy and customer-centric innovation. Her personal passion is to support and guide women who are trying to second act in their career. Before we start the presentation, a few housekeeping details. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them in question box. It's on the top right, it's chat. And during the presentation, Vidya will pause for the question and either she will, actually I will read the question for her and then she'll answer your question. Vidya, the floor is yours. Vidya, you are in mute, I think.
Fantastic. Okay. It already looks better from now. Okay. Hey, good evening, everyone. I just wanted to say hello with the video once before we get started. I'm very glad you are here. I am too. This is my second time doing this webinar. So I've been able to iterate a little on the content. I'm definitely looking forward to your feedback. I sincerely hope that this is useful and it helps you guide your user centricity and how empathic you can be in the development of the product. So let's get started. All right, you should be able to see my screen. Are you?
Yes. Actually, not yet.
Not yet.
Oh, actually, yeah, I can see it now.
Yeah. So, okay. It's in the presentation mode now. You should be able to see. Yes. Rakesh, yeah. Are you able to see the slide?
Yeah, I can see the slide.
Okay. So, all right, everyone. So name this session as UX UI architecture session, just as it is given in your list of, in your itinerary. We would be discussing we would unpack what UX and UI is, and we would also talk about what human-centric design is in today's session. And how to make sense of what is this UX term, UI term, human centricity, what do all these terms mean? And then we'll also walk through an example as to how to make it real, the kind of things, the concepts we are talking about, how do we make it real? What does it really look like? What does it mean, given an example? And finally, you have the templates and resources in the appendix. Yeah, that have been to the appendix. So you have templates, resources, and extra links and some anecdotes that can really be very useful, that have been guiding me in my work, and I thought I'd share that with you. So the first part is unpacking UX and UI. So I'd like to know, think about a product that you really like. The product doesn't necessarily have to be a digital product, doesn't have to be an app, but think about the product you really love. I want to ask you to type the kind of products that you think you love. I'm looking at the chat window now. Go ahead, type the product that you love and say a word about it. Like, why do you love it? It is, fill in the blank and write it for me. People, you have chat windows. Yeah, okay. So John Munar writes, Google because it gives me anything I search for. Wonderful. Okay. Who else? Varun Shripati says it is Slack because its user interface is easy to use. Okay. Give me two more and I'll switch back. Come on, there are so many products that you like. You don't have to be so secretive. I'll tell you, I love my Vitamix because it creates such smooth soups. So go for it. I'm hearing some typing, but I don't see anything on the chat. Oh, that's a vigorous chatting. I mean, typing.
It's me.
Okay, one more, people. Come on, there are 17 people here. Except me and Rakesh, you are 15 people. You can muscle up one more. Come on, it is an interactive session. Okay. YouTube because it is entertaining. B Chan says YouTube because it is entertaining. Okay. So you had pretty interesting words. So people usually say so valuable, so useful, awesome, wow, can't live without, it makes me feel so good. So your Slack, YouTube, and Google all fall under the category of can't live without, definitely. And you could be using some of these words. So I'm in the presentation, not in the presentation mode again. Okay, so great products have these qualities. They are useful, they are valuable, they are usable, meaning simple to use, delightful, memorable, helps you make progress. When you talk about Slack, that's what you mean. It helps you make progress, it makes you more productive. It makes you feel like a better version of yourself. Think about your exercise app or Fitbit app or anything. It enables behavior change. So these are the qualities great products have. Now, well-designed products create very memorable experiences. This is something, if you're familiar with Nielsen Norman, this is a very, very popular work from him. What he talks about is every product uh, has to be memorable, which means the design needs to be emotional. And he talks about it in three ways. Visceral. Visceral means something that you feel from within. Behavioral means it helps you change your behavior. Reflective means it helps you think about some progress you made. For example, when I wear my Fitbit and I look at my statistics, I'm so glad, oh my God, I really made 10,000 steps in the last month. It makes me reflect and feel good. When I see a great YouTube video that's for free, it makes me, oh my God, what a great opportunity that I have. It makes me feel great from within. Behavioral, Slack, for example, makes you productive, or Google that helps you find anything. Even YouTube that helps you learn. So all products have these qualities that are emotionally designed, that brings visceral dimension, reflective dimension, and behavioral dimension out of you. So that's what we talk. When we say user experience, we are talking about that great user experience created by emotional design. If you think about design, think about it as something intentional. When you are so intentional about giving progress to people, making it work for them in the best possible way, you create a great user experience. That's what you do. So I want to go to the definition, the formal definition of user experience, and then break it down for you. So user experience encompasses all aspects of the end user's interaction with the company, its services, and its products. Typically, people make the mistake of thinking about UX as only something on the in the digital world. Like it can only be an app or it can only be a desktop application or a website. No, it doesn't have to be. User experience, the word, when it was originally formed, it meant it encompasses all aspects of the end user's interaction with the company, its services, and its products. So now let's break it down. When we talk about a company, you're talking about the marketing, sales, and the social aspects. For example, if you engage with the Delta Airlines via Twitter, that is an interaction. And if they are great to you, you feel great. That user experience is wonderful. If not, you don't like it, and you give a pretty bad reference to them. So your user experience is affected, and that's going to affect them. It's products. Getting value by trying or using the product. It can be an app or it can be my Vitamix. Whether physical or digital doesn't matter here. It is the product that I'm actually using and the company I'm engaging with. It's services. So after I use the product, I may seek help or support to make the most of the product. How can I use my smart TV the best way? I might go and reach their support or go to their website and blog pages and engage with them. So those are the services aspect. So when you think about user experience, you think about it holistically. When I work with Best Buy, we think about the website, the mobile app, the in-store experience that they have, the social channels we have. So we have to think about the whole gamut. And that's what designing user experience is. So, and UX is also one other way of thinking about UX is the outcome of strategy translating into a solution. Now, this feels pretty buttoned up and very academic, but it is important for you to know these terms and understand it because UX is not, it doesn't just come out of thin air. You can't make it up. You have to really be intentional about it. You have to design it with intent. So, the outcome of a strategy translating into a solution. A well designed strategy and thoughtful design results in whatever your favorite product is. Google. Google by intent is very minimal. When people are coming and typing something that they want to learn about or find out, they are not interested in any frills. They just want to get the job done. So help them make progress with the minimal noise. That's why it just has one text box where you type. You got nothing there, nothing else there going on there. It's not because they can't put everything there, but it is intentionally very minimalistic because they are trying to serve you and get you to an answer very fast because that's what helping you is. A not so well designed strategy and thoughtless design results in think of a product that you stopped using. Think of an app that did not prove value to you, which means that strategy and design was messed up. It did not help you in any way. They didn't think of you as the end customer and design for you. So now let's move on to UI design, user interface design. UI design is everything designed into an information device with which a person may interact. It sounds very clunky, right? The definition, but it will help you unpack the differences. So think of a website. A website is an information device. A refrigerator with its own smart keyboard and everything is an information device. You need to know what the temperature is and whether you have water for the ice or not, and an ATM, whether it is working or not. So all these things, whatever you see to gain some information is the UI part. That's one definition. The focus is on look and feel and task success and simplification. So UX is about everything and UI is about whatever you can look and feel and work with something. If you can work with something, there is UI present there. But your entire feeling that comes out of that interaction is UX. UI design typically refers to the graphical user interfaces, but also includes others such as voice controlled ones. Your Alexa is a UI design too, because you see those lights blinking or not blinking, and that's giving you a message. Your refrigerator with your smart refrigerators and ATMs also have UI design. UI is a subset of UX. It is not UX. It is an integral part of UX, but it is not UX. So one other way to think about it is think about UX as an umbrella. If I have to put very technical terms, UX is addressing visual design, information architecture, interaction design, usability, user research, content strategy. Everything falls under UX. But if you see the third one, interaction design, that's what interaction design and visual design, that's what typically we call as UI. And to an extent, the content also. If they are engaging with the content, yes, that also forms a part of user interface. So yes. And usability and user research is what will inform how the experience should be. So it happens much before. Usability is you're validating if the solution is good enough. We'll get into more of what usability is. But the rest of it are part of UI that is driving the UX. So UX can't exist without the UI, but it is not the same as UI. This is another way to think about it. When you think about UX toolkit, all these form a part of UX. I'm not going to read it out now. You can refer it later. But look at it. These are the only two aspects that speak of UI, whereas people confuse the rest of it also as UI. They just conflate the terms and talk about it synonymously. Only these two stand for UI, and all these are UX. To design a successful UI, you need to think about the end-to-end UX. And to realize the user experience UX, you need a successful UI. So UX is not UI. I think I've repeated that multiple times. There is also this website that can give you fantastic, very quick and easy to understand definitions and explanations of why and how you should not confuse it. Now, switching gears here, some products are great and some are not. So, is this magic? Is this just a hit or miss? Just serendipitous? Just people got lucky? It's a happy accident? No, you can engineer this every single time. There is a method for it. There is an approach that will not fail you if you follow it right. So, what is that method? That's what we call as human-centric design. So when you hear about design thinking is one approach of human-centric design, the most popular approach of human-centric design. There are other ones called service design. There are other processes called lean processes. So they also fall under the same umbrella, but everything, the category's name is human-centric design. If you just look at it, it says the design is done for the people. It is centered around the human beings who is going to interact with it. That's pretty much what the term is. So I want to take a pause here for some questions because this is the next section we are moving on to. So let me take a pause and switch back. If you have any questions, you can type and I can wait.
I think we have a question from John. He asked, he said, would customer service count as a user experience?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because it comes under support, right? Support, and it comes under the service bucket. It definitely is user experience. How many times has anyone had the experience calling Comcast? And if you're hanging out on Twitter, you can see so many memes about Comcast and United Airlines. So their service sucks. And that's why they get a very bad rap. And that's UX, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Okay. All right, let me switch back. People feel free to engage now because we have time. Instead of parking the questions to the end, I want to take a pause and field your questions. It becomes easier if you ask as we deal with the subjects. Okay, so let me go back to so human-centric design. Now, I didn't want to take design thinking or service design out of the other ones and complicate it because it fundamentally boils down to a few principles. I was not interested in introducing a lot of jargon. You're anyway going to come across it. There is going to be a lot of material. But I want to lay the foundations for you in terms of principles. What does it really mean when we talk about human-centric design? It starts with focusing on the people, focusing on the right problems, thinking of the end-to-end experience, always testing and learning. And fifth is continuously improving. These are pretty much your 5 principles. Whether you call design thinking, whether you call lean principles, whatever you do, you cannot escape any of these things. And if you are, it's not complete, because all these are all important to engineer a successful product that adds value to people. So, when we say focus on the people, what are we really talking about? These are the questions I want you to ask yourselves. I didn't want to give you long definitions, but I wanted to set you up with questions so that if you ask this question and you have a clear answer, you are done. You can move to the next stage. So, the questions you would ask yourself is, who am I building this for? In what context, time, place, device, etc., will they use our product? What are their motivations, goals, and needs? Motivation is very different from goals and needs. Motivation is about why I would use it. Goal is, if I'm using it, this is what I want to accomplish. Needs is, oh my God, it would be so nice if they enable this. What are their pain points? What solutions are they using now? That's a very, very important question to ask. What are you trying to replace? Are you going to be an N+1 solution, one more solution in the market? Or are you going to really differentiate yourself? It's an important question to ask. When we ask these questions, that's what we call as user research. And the deliverables usually are personas, empathy maps, user or job stories, user one-pagers. I have examples for you as to how they will look. That's what is the result of what you learn as answers for these questions. So that's here. I wanted to set you up with these techniques, lean user research and guerrilla user research, because they are the quick ways of doing things instead of becoming very elaborate and losing time. I know you're all on a tight schedule. So these are the techniques and they are links. You can go and read those articles and actually implement it. I use these for my teams, so they are very, very actionable links. How can you find real people to do user research? That's another question that usually comes up. So first get clear on the criteria, which is what these links will refer as the screener. And it can be from your network, it can be Facebook or social networks, secondary research articles on how people learn. Given this project, how people learn is an important thing that you may want to think about. So there could be articles available on the internet about how people learn. Those could also be helpful for you to think about your use cases. So this slide was about focus on the people. The first principle, what does it mean? And this is about how to do that. If you have to do it, what are the techniques and how will you go about doing it? So this is a sample persona. You don't have to always go this detailed, but you want to go for enough detail that makes sense. But this is a good example. This should not take you a very long time to put together. If you have spoken to 5 people, the right 5 people, it should not take a long time for you to put together. So this is another way of thinking about it, an empathy map. What do they say? What do they think? What do they do? What do they feel? This sometimes feels very simple when you talk to people quickly to map it with Post-its or even in an Excel sheet. And you have this example of an empathy map when people buy a TV. That example should be very clarifying for you. Third this is from one of my projects. This is a template I use with my Best Buy teams. So this gets really detailed. You don't have to necessarily use this, but some of these questions can help you think deeper. So you don't have to think about creating this deliverable, but leverage these questions to expand and extend your thinking process. So that's step 1. If you have questions, if you put it in chat, Rakesh will let me know. But I don't want to take a stop at every step. Do you have any questions now? I'm going to give you 10, 20 seconds if you have any questions to put it in. Okay. I'm moving on to the second. Yeah, there is a question.
No, I didn't see any question yet.
Okay. All right. So the second principle is find the right problem. One thing we need to very, very clearly understand, this was really hard for me in the beginning. Not all problems are worth solving. So ask these 5 questions. Is this a problem or a symptom? If this is a problem, what are the existing solutions? Is this important enough to solve? Are we fitting into our users' life, or are we making them do an extra step to do this? How many apps have you deleted because it doesn't work for you? How many problems are you living with in your own life? Little problems, big problems. That it's okay, it's not worth buying a solution, even if it exists. And the final one is this viable and technically feasible at this time? If you think about a problem actually building out, you may not face this, or you may. For example, there could be a use case that is very complex, that it may take a lot of time for you, that it's not viable for you to do this during this project time. So ask yourself, are you going after the right problem? Is it worth solving it? So how do you do this? So there are tools like Value Proposition Canvas and Lean Canvas, which are great tools to actually even ideate with your team. It does not take more than 45 minutes to 1 hour. I can guarantee you that. If you are really dedicating your time and you have learned from the user research what the problems are, what kind of problem you're solving and who the users are, you should be able to fill this out very fast. And that can drive so much clarity in what you're going to build. So again, these are links, and I just wanted to give you the picture for you to familiarize with it. These are the techniques that are usually very helpful if you're going after the right problem. Third is think about the end-to-end experience. So have you ever wondered landing on an article without the ability to share? Maybe today you don't have. This is probably an outdated example, but there are times you may have worked with reports which does not have an export capability. How many times have you had to repeat information to different customer service reps because they are not exactly logging the details and passing it on to the next department? You keep repeating yourselves. How many times have you bought something online and could not return to the store? So 2 years back, I could not return Macy's online purchases to the stores. That was pretty recent. So that is because people don't think about the end-to-end experience. How do human beings work? I can buy online and I may change my mind when I go to the mall. I can return it. I may get into a problem. I could be calling the marketing department, but actually I may have to talk to their legal department. I don't care. For me, they are united. That's all. For me, they are Comcast. So they don't think about what it means to be me and think about my end-to-end experience. So that's why it is important to think about the end-to-end experience of who you're designing for. So one example I wanted to show you here was, so I was trying to log in to my other laptop yesterday. So what happens is, this is a classic example. You would have seen this screen too. So think about this. The forgot email it's accounting for common human errors. People usually forget their password. Look at this. Not your computer. Use a private window to sign in. What a thoughtful addition it is, because we all use external laptops sometimes and we may not want our information to be logged in. Account for valuable, not typical scenarios. The third, learn more. So when I see this, it's helpful, but immediately I worry if I can trust them. So it says, learn more. Account for human uncertainty and anxiety. Look at create account, the other option. That's an alternate use case. Not everybody comes to it to sign in, but there could be people who are trying to sign up. So look for alternate use cases using the same page. And the next, that is a simple happy path. Okay, people come in, they log in, and yes, they have this password, boom, next step. Usually, people who poorly design, they only imagine one happy path. They come in, that's a happy path, they sign in and they move on. Look at the way Google has evolved its design to think about all these aspects. That's thoughtful design. So that's what it is about thing. That's what it means to think about end-to-end experience. You may not always log into your laptop. You may be outside. You may be logging into your friend's laptop. They think about your life and try to fit into it with these helpful capabilities. So one way to think about this is think this, not that. When you're beginning to understand your customer's life, think narratives, not features. Think about their stories, not just features. They want login feature. Don't think about it like that. How are they? Okay, they want to get in and they want to do something. They could be in a hurry. They could just have their mobile and poor Wi-Fi. What do they do? So when you think about their story, their situations in life, that's what we call as narratives. So don't just think about features, think narratives. Think experiences and not just interactions. What do? They put in this user field and that gets validated, and next step, boom. Don't think about it as interactions. Think about it as experience. Okay, if there is poor Wi-Fi, how can we help them? They have forgotten their password. They cannot access their email. Can we send them a text? Is SMS capability enabled? So that expands your mind to think about somebody's positive experience and not just get stuck with your own flow and the interactions that you plan within the boundaries you set. Think about how the product will fit into their life and not how you can sell your product. It's just a mindset shift. And even people who do this don't do it out of malice. They just do it because they are not as thoughtful as they can be. So having things like this guides you to be more thoughtful. So this is one example that I made up. This was the previous project, the previous year's project. So this is an example I made up. So it was about bullying, and instead of talking about, okay, we need to give them help to log in, we need to help them make a complaint. Now you're thinking in features. But if you think about the story, and if you do user research, actually talk to the users, you will be able to come up with something like this. You will tell their story in a way that will unpack so many other capabilities for you. Jordan stared at his phone. It made him angry and confused. Someone had called him names and had become very abusive. This was not the first time he felt bullied, but he wondered if he was taking it too seriously. He wanted to know if this was bullying or just online social drama. He needed help and some support. He reached for his phone to explore. Now, then once you understand the story, the actual intent and emotion behind it, now you can use job stories or user stories. User story is what you may be familiar with generally. Job story is another way that I usually use. So you have the link here if you're interested. The difference and why the job story is more beneficial is because it preserves the context, the situation, when something happened. It's very important in design to preserve the context. This can be very beneficial than a user story in general. So this is how it will break down. It's the same narrative on the left side. Now I broke it down as this is the situation. Someone is trolling. Oh, sorry about the typo. Someone is trolling Jordan. Thinks, what does he think? He thinks he's being bullied and wants to do something. That's his motivation. You're capturing the goals and needs of the person. Feel, how is he feeling? He's feeling confused and angry, wonders if he is overreacting. Do, what does he actually do? Uses his phone to learn more, looks for the right option on Safari or App Store. So now, by unpacking that narrative, you've not only understood his motivations and feelings, you're also getting down to the level of what channel, what action he's taking. So that is going to really help you get to the granular details of your wireframes and actually build your app. But it all starts with the very narrative that you understood about his life. If you don't spend time and understand his story correctly, your end product will not have an emotional design that has a visceral response, that has a reflective response, and that has a behavioral response. That's what useful, awesome products do. So I want to take a pause here. Do you have any questions? Okay,
I don't see any
I'll move
question.
on. All right. I must be doing really well or totally confusing. Let's see.
Really?
All right. Step 4, the fourth principle, always test and learn. Now, our scenarios are ready to be translated into low fidelity prototypes. Why is that? Because so think about it where we are. We focused on the people, we focused on the right problems, we thought of the end to end experience. Now we are ready to build and test and learn. So, we are also ready to establish, we already established user stories. Oh, okay. I understood the reason why it was there now. Okay, we can do this. Sometimes it is done in parallel because once you get clarity about the user story, you start wireframing also. Sketching on paper can be helpful and they mutually inform each other. Now, paper sketches. I work a lot with paper sketches. You don't have to go to any tool before you get this right. So definitely use a lot of paper, use a lot of post-its, or if you are very environment, centric, then use your PowerPoint or Word or Excel, just draw boxes and keep replicating it. It's such a great exercise to think aloud. Uh, and you don't have to waste a lot of learning or time in terms of learning a new tool or making it pretty. Lo-fi wireframes. One other is Balsamic. This is from Balsamic. I have some links for you. That's also very useful because it gives you an appearance of, it gives you the web template. I think you're doing a mobile app, so doing it in paper or in PowerPoint should be good enough for a lo-fi wireframe. Then you will start organizing. As a group, when you're working, you can start organizing your prototypes. You may have it in one particular flow. As you discuss, the flow will change. You may add an additional step. Do all this. Spend a lot of time on ideation and co-creation. Your app will be so much better for that. Then you can make them really pretty if you want. I don't know what is the level of fidelity that is expected of you for this project, but then move to high fidelity. You have absolute clarity and confidence. Now you can move to high fidelity. So how do we do this? What are the techniques? So PowerPoint, like I said, PowerPoint, Keynote, or Google Slides for lo-fi is good enough. I have also added the link of 9 free wireframing tools for medium or hi-fi. There is also a great course for beginners that is free. So these are the links that should be really useful for you if you're getting started. So I wanted to add a bonus step here about the UX, UI, and business process, because I understand that your deliverable this time would be not only the UI flow, but you have to overlay that with the business process. So I wanted to show you what it looks like. It is actually very simple. Once you do the user research and you can conceptually think about the flow. So this is a login flow. The user tries to log in, they enter their username, enters their password, they are greeted with their first name, prompted to proceed to homepage. That's a pretty simple, straightforward login flow. Once you have that, then you do the wireframing and everything. But even at this stage, when you're conceptually clear about what is the flow, what steps need to happen, you are ready to expand on the business process. So you can say system A is ready. When the user tries to log in, they enter their username. System A validates what is stored. System A also checks for timeout. There are times you've entered your username and stepped away. When you come back, sometimes systems timeout. So those are the things that systems does. I'm just making up stuff here, but depending on what business rules you want to implement, you have to think about what system will do what, will execute what rule for that step. The third step being enters password. System A validates with what's stored for the respective username. System A talks to System B with the respective username and retrieves the first name of the user. Maybe System B is where the master records are kept, and System A is just for login credential authentication. And then you're greeted with the first name. System B hands it over to System C that houses the homepage module. And when the user is actually going to the homepage, System C takes over, and that's it. So it can be as simple as that. It is a process of iteration. Don't let your concern stop you from beginning. You don't make a good the enemy of great. So get started and iterate. You will land in the right place. That's why you have mentors. So don't be afraid to get started or make a mistake. Iteration is the world order today. So go for it. So now let's make this real. I wanted to give you a simple checklist. Okay, you've listened to all this. What do I need to do? You need to understand the user needs and motivations. So the deliverables will be user stories or persona via user research. Empathy maps can also be here. If you, I forgot to add that. Now, I understand that you have already submitted user stories in your first deliverable. No harm done. When you actually talk to people, you might want to revisit those user stories and make changes. Because at this time, you may have come up with user stories based on what you instinctively know or by common sense or with a mental conversation. But actually talking to users can unfold different dimensions because they are the actual people going through those learning cycles. The second one is once you understand that, you will be ready to put some kind of a flow, UI flow. First, you just have to do it in text and then you can get into the wireframe and everything. Establish a UI flow. Third, think about a business process. Fourth, validate the UI flow with users. That's what we call as usability test. Now you understood what their problem was, but is your design understandable? So the first one is about usefulness. The fourth step is about usability. Is it really intuitive or simple for somebody to use? Does your flow make sense for them? It's important to do that. So that's the 4 steps. And then you basically, based on the feedback, you iterate back and forth until you have time, and then you are ready to go for the next step of high fidelity prototype and finalizing your app. These are pretty much your simple checklist steps. This is just another version of that. So the same 5 principles I talked about, what are the deliverables, what are the hows? This is an example problem statement from last year, the bully problem, that I worked out all the 4 steps for you to get a sense of it. So I want to take a pause here because this is something you can even go through on your own time. If you have questions, this would be a good time to ask.
We have a question from John.
Okay.
Question is, should we present user stories as a story rather than explicitly saying who I am, what do I want, and what is my goal?
Should you ask the question again, Rakesh?
Should we present user stories as a story rather than explicitly saying who I am, what do I want, and what is my goal?
What would be the difference? What is the difference between saying, because a user story format pretty much says, as a user, I want to be able to do something.
Right.
So I don't understand the difference between the 2 alternatives given.
John, can you explain further? So he said the format would be a single line versus the story format would be adding emotional language and such into it, like what you had an example of the bullied kid.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, John, for clarifying, and thank you, Rakesh. So the story format is what you do first. The user story is what is done after that. So the story informs user stories. The reason we have both is because one story can give you many user stories. One narrative, one scenario can give you many user stories. So that is why we separate them, because we want to keep each of the capability in a user story separate.
He said, thank you.
Yeah, sure. You're welcome.
And we have another question from Vivek.
Mhm.
Will user understand the flow with low fidelity prototypes, or should it be high fidelity prototypes? And he has a second question. Probably I'll let you answer first one.
Yeah. So thank you. So users, it depends. It depends on what you're trying to validate. So if it's an AR VR application, for example, let's say, I know yours is not. AR VR applications, low fidelity doesn't cut it. But in my experience, any mobile app, low fidelity, people clearly understand what is directionally what is happening. When you say, okay, you are going to log in and you have these paper, I've even put paper sketches in front of them. Directionally, as long as they are clear, it's helpful. But if you are looking for something like, let's say there is a, so short answer is yes. People don't get confused. You can do a lot with low fidelity prototypes. Having said that, there are times when it may not be applicable. For example, this may not be what you're building, but with the companies I work with, sometimes there is an animation or there is a very small micro interaction that we want to test. In that case, low fidelity may not cut it. It may not be adequate. So we may have to go for slightly high fidelity prototype. Sometimes some HTML magic is required for us to show what actually happens there. So in those cases, a low fidelity prototype may not be adequate. But for your purposes for this app, it must be more than adequate.
Great. And his second question is, how can we do usability testing?
You found the people for Gorilla. Initially, I had a slide called Gorilla Testing. You can find people from your Facebook or social network or your friends, as long as they are the people who did some career change or who learned something in the later stages of their lives. I read your prompt. So based on that, whoever has done this is a great resource for you to test it. You don't always have to test it with the people who you talk to as part of user research, but include some of them and include new people so that you get a good mix of the responses. But initially start with I have gone to Best Buy for research and I have stopped people and tried to test the mobile app with them. So people are pretty friendly. In general, find somebody in your network or find somebody via your social network. For this app, you should have a lot of people who have that experience. Everybody learns online. Everybody is trying to change, do a side hustle. So you shouldn't have problems at all.
He said, got it, thank you. And we have another question. This question is from Vaidyanathan. For web application, how do you represent the portability of the screens? He's referring to the small, big, and medium-sized screen with a different resolution, like mobile versus computer, for the mock-ups.
So the first part of portability, I'm out of my depth to answer. But if the question was the same user interface, I want to show it in laptop, mobile, and desktop. The free wireframe tools, all of them, not all of them, I don't know. Most of them support all three device types. So whatever you're creating, it should be able to show you in a responsive manner how it will look like to the actual user. But from a resolution point, portability, I'm sorry, I am out of my depth. I don't know the answer.
I think that's what he meant.
No, I wouldn't be able to answer that. But any wireframe tool generally shows resolution. For resolution, you have to go to high fidelity. That's not my area of expertise. Sorry. I only worked with the prototypes created in high fidelity. He's asking how do we create and what is its, how does it handle the resolution? That's not a question I know anything about. Sorry.
I think he meant he said okay, thank you. I think from what I understood, the question is that I think he meant the same thing that you just said about the responsive design, where when you create the mockups, and you can basically, based on whether you choose small, medium, or large, it automatically adjusts, right? So
Yeah, that shouldn't be a problem at all.
yeah.
Most of them give you that possibility.
Any other question? So another question from Vivek. Do you perform feasibility testing with prototypes?
I think he's asking about in person or remote. When you say physically, what do you mean? In
Oh,
person?
feasibility, sorry.
Sorry?
He said, do you perform feasibility testing with prototypes?
No, feasibility is usually technical possible. Technically, if is it possible to build? Sometime in your case, it could be, do you have enough time to build that, to explore that feature and present it? So that's not a prototype question. That's something that has to be decided before you create the prototype. It's a scoping problem. So how much am I going to work on? Is it possible for now? Is a question. And can you build it? For example, if you're coding the app, yes, with the current knowledge and the time, can you actually build it? It's a question that is explored before you create the flow. Or rather, once you create the flow, whoever is coding in your team, you should have a discussion and say, okay, this is too much and we should only go this far. That's feasibility. That's got nothing to do with usability testing. Does that help or should I expand on it?
Vivek, does that answer your question?
I'm glad to expand.
So he has a follow-up question. So he said, do you change the design if it is not implementable, or do you decide it upfront?
No, we don't usually design if something is not implementable. In the real world, also, it doesn't work that way because I don't have to design something that is not going to be released. So I don't. So initially, so this is how the sequence is. I understand from the users what needs to be built. I concept out the flow, let's say. So I say we come up with 5 features, A, B, C, D, E, and this is the flow. I go to my engineers and I talk to them and they say, sorry, A and E cannot be done. We only can work on B, C, D because it's not feasible. Our architecture does not support it. And then I come back to my designer. The designer says, sorry, D is very complicated. There are too many states. I cannot work on it. So all of us together, we arrive at, okay, we're only going to work on B and C this time. And okay, then I create the wireframe. I create with the designer's help the wireframe. And then also sometimes we cut down certain steps because it's very complicated. So we scope it at every level. Once we are all aligned and give a thumbs up on, okay, this is something we can build, that's what we take to the user. Because we don't want to be spending time on anything that we are not going to build. That should be the same rule applicable. I mean, that's applicable to you too. It's best to work that way. Does that answer your question?
So So he has another follow-up question. So he's asking,
Okay.
can we miss what user actually wants through these scoping? How do we validate that?
That is a wonderful question. Yes, there is definitely a risk in that. That is why you have to be the advocate for the user, that when you're trying to scope something that is important, you have to stand up and say, okay, we cannot cut this out. This is such a key component of what the experience is. And you should back it up with your research, with your narratives and everything. So you have to be the user's advocate to say, because you're focusing on the people as the first principle, so you will say, no, we should do this, how can we make this work? So yes, that's a really good question, and that's an everyday problem that I face. So yes, welcome to life.
He said, understood. Thanks a lot.
Sure.
Any other questions from? I don't see any other questions, so we can proceed.
Okay. So this, I'm not going to fully elaborate on this, but I wanted to show you what this means. So the problem statement was design an app to address the needs around bullying. So if we take the first principle, focus on people, let's say we do user interviews, we talk to people who have been bullied or who has a friend who has been bullied. So we talk to those kind of people. So this is, you have to think about who would be the right audience. You could talk to a person who has been bullied or who has bullied in the past. He or she has bullied in the past. Or it could be a friend who has seen somebody being bullied. All these are right personas, because the problem statement is help address the needs around bullying, right? So you can be any kind of person who is affected by this. So here we add one this is one way of thinking about it. The person who is bullied, the person who is bullying, the friend of a bully, the friend of the bullied, right? So you can think about the needs of this app from any of these four personas. Maybe you will address all their needs if you have a big team and have a lot of time, or maybe you'll just pick one person who is the most important and focus on their problems. That depends on your time and the knowledge and how long, the scoping issue it is. But when you actually do the interviews, you will uncover these four personas. So don't constrain yourself about the knowledge, about the information you're finding out. You're only going to scope after you find the information, what you're going to do about it. That depends on the time and knowledge you have. But when you start understanding, don't constrain yourself. So this is one example. This is a one pager that I showed you there. I put it together for the friend of the person who is bullying. So I want to just read a couple sections here. The goals and needs. I want to be able to help my friend to take control of his anger issues. I want to become an advocate and raise awareness. Those are the two goals that Jenna has, whose friend is a bully. So take the pain points, for example. There is no easy way to make a complaint. I don't know how to organize events and raise awareness. Even our parents need to learn how to talk about this. Take context of use, the next one. Happens when people are alone or with someone, online or offline. Mostly when people are using social media or in the evenings when my friends walk home. So these are the different ways you think about how the person, this persona is thinking about bullying. When you start exploring this, it naturally expands your thinking about how you will build features, how the steps should be laid out to make it easy. So then find the right problem. So ideation, you can talk to, once you have the problems, value proposition canvas is a great example, like I showed you yesterday. Even ideation can get you to the key problems to solve. So here I have the four personas in the four columns, and I mapped out two needs for both of them, two key problems to solve. A problem is the same as a goal or a need or an aspiration, but I framed it as a problem because now you're ready to solve them. You're trying to scope them, so I framed it as problem. Now you can see the green ones as something that you definitely want to solve for. The red one, no, you're not going to make time for it now. It's too much thinking, too much effort, don't have enough time. And these ones are okay. If you have time, you would definitely consider it. That's the next second kind of feature. I mean, second tier of features that you want to work on. So this is what I'm talking about as scoping the right problems. This would happen with the engineering person who codes, with the designing person who can design. And if somebody cuts, let's say instead of the second row, first item wants to seek help discreetly. I said I wanted to cut. Let's cut wants to lodge a complaint, which is this one, which has a green tick mark. Then one of you should speak up and say, hey, come on, we are building a bullying app. If they can't even lodge a complaint, what is the whole point of this app? No, it should not just be, it should be actionable and we should help the user. So somebody will have to be the advocate for the user and you have to speak up and fight for it. Think about the end-to-end experience. So that again, from the user interviews, you would have understood the narratives. Okay, this is what is happening in their life. Then you translate it to user or job stories. So this is the example that I showed you before. So once you have the narrative, you can break it down as this. This is basically what we call as a journey map. The think, do, feel are the parts of a journey map. But forget the words. When you have the narrative, you can break it down into something like this or as a user story, whichever works for you. But start with the narrative because that can give you very rich set of user stories. It can lead to multiple use cases. So to be clear, what we're trying to do is, let's take this one, wants to lodge a complaint. Once I decide this is the problem I'm going to solve, I go back to my interview and write and find the narratives, whatever people said about that problem. So that's what gives me the story part of it. So it just doesn't have to be from one user because your persona is always a combination of a few people of the similar kind of people's problems. So once you scope it, that this is what you're going to work on, now you write the narrative. Okay, these are all the aspects that people talked about. And then you move to the user stories. Is that sequence clear to everybody? Okay, if not, you can put it in the chat and we can go over that again. So you can take one narrative and break it down like this, like situation, think, feel, and do, or look at this here. I just made it into a job story. When I see my friend bullying someone, I get tongue-tied. I want to know how to talk to him or her so that I can guide my friend and help others. So that's a user story that comes from that narrative. Always test and learn. So what are the techniques? Usability testing, prototyping, and low fidelity prototypes. Sorry. This is confusing. The technique is... So this is an example I want to show you. So let's say I created this in PowerPoint. It looks terrible, but this is good enough for me to test with somebody. So what I did was I got really fancy making an icon too in PowerPoint so poorly, but focus on the content. So I basically put 3 menu items. You are being bullied. Someone says you're a bully. Your friend acts like a bully. So what's the situation here is what I'm trying to find out. So let's say the user chooses this. You're being bullied. I am just showing the flow. This is what it means. So you can say, I'm sorry about that. Let's say you're being bullied. I'm sorry about that. How can I help you? Do you need to lodge a complaint? Need to understand why they behave this way? Need to learn how you can take control of the situation. What is it you want to do? Let's say they picked something here. Then it goes to a complaint form. So if let's say I after doing the user research, after deciding this is the problem I wanted to solve, helping people with these three options. These are the three key problems I would have identified. Based on the narrative and the user stories, I would have built these pieces. I hope you're able to see my cursor, the second screen. So the first screen would be informed by my key problems to solve. The second screen is what my narrative and user stories would have given me. And I'm breaking it down further into the complaint form. So when I put this for usability test in front of somebody, they could say, this is all great, but I want to know what happens after I file a complaint. They don't see what happens. They see that there is a complaint form. It asks for their name, contact, kind of abuse, and any details, and submit. But now what? I don't know what happens. So once I hear that feedback from a user, I think, okay, now I have to iterate. So this is the first iteration. The second iteration, see what I did. What happens now is something that I added. Here is what happens after you lodge a complaint. So that's what I did. So that's what iteration gives you. It helps you build and pack more value. It makes it more intuitive. The fancy way of saying intuitiveness is focusing on expectation alignment. But if you think about the phrase, that's exactly what it is. Is your design aligned to their expectations? So now let's say I did the second iteration. I'm very happy with myself and I put it in front of them. Now I'm just focusing on one screen. So when I give them this, they could say, oh, this language is too in my face. You're being bullied is too in my face. Sometimes I'm not sure about people's actions. I don't know what to pick. I think there are too many options here. So people could give you different feedback. You have to look for a pattern of feedback. You can't always do whatever the users want. You have to think about what your product strategy is, what your product is meant to do, what is your vision with the product. Let's say, for example, if your goal was also to educate people, that's why you're giving US and local statistics. Somebody who is being bullied may not care about it, but somebody who is a friend of a bully may want to learn more about the statistics or learn more about bullying. So even though some people may say there are too many options, given who you are building it for, you could be building it for the bully, for the victim, as well as for the friend of a bully. So depending on who you are building for and what your app is meant for, you will take their feedback and decide what you can best do about it. So don't forget what your judgment piece, just because the user says something that does not have to be implemented all the time. You have to be an advocate for their problem, but you're not their assistant to implement everything. That's why we think about it. We think about the product we're building, the goal we have, and use our judgment also. So those are just the examples I wanted to give you. So I wanted to just summarize it. So I added a new menu option saying you're not sure if someone is a bully. So that's an option I modified based on this feedback. I didn't change everything. I just modified one thing. I updated you are being bullied because they said it's in your face, and that's my primary audience. I changed it to someone is bullying you. And then I updated learn more was removed from the main menu and moved to the right corner. I just moved it here so that I still have it, but I respect their their feedback about just too many options and it's confusing. And I also removed the US and local statistics and folded it under learned more. I got smarter, I respected them, but I also executed on what my product strategy is. So sometimes you have to get smart about how you do things. While you do want to give them what they want, it's not just about what they want, it's what they need. So once you think about those things, you can use your judgment better. Now, after this stage, you've pretty much put it in front of them, you've validated, you have used your product strategy judgment, your app is going to be a useful one. Now go to high fidelity. do all the jazz, visual design, animation. If someone can do that for you, do all that amazingly. Do one more round of usability testing if possible, and that's about it. So then you can continuously improve. So even during the usability testing, I showed you 3 iterations. Continuously improve is just the order of the world today. So the outcome would be a progressive product that helps people make progress. That's all any product is meant to do, and that's what your product will be if you do this. So this is just a slide that I wanted to show you. If so, when we think about the order of things, when people say I might use it, they have an initial attraction. It's just desirable. When they say I can use it, it offers function and value. When they say I will use it, they say it's compelling and persuasive and trustful. When they say I love it, now we have got to the top of the mountain, the emotional design we have achieved. Now you don't necessarily have to. You shouldn't think that making a really pretty high fidelity app is going to get you here. Anytime you close a gap, you solve a problem, a pain that was not addressed with real substantial value, people are going to love your product. So it is only a matter of how much value you're packing and what is the promise you are making to them. So that brings us to the end of the session. Wishing you lots of inspiration. If you want to connect with me, you can connect with me in LinkedIn. I'm going to send this deck across. I have also added all the templates. All these templates are editable for you. So you can take this. I also added some resources here. So yeah, that brings us. I just want to take a minute to talk about this one. So you would hear so many terms: design thinking, lean UX, agile development. How are these related to human-centric design? Design thinking is about empathizing with people and exploring the right problem. It focuses mainly on that, and our 5 principles are very close to design thinking only. Lean principles, they also care about those things, but their focus is more on learning faster. So they give a lot of importance to iteration and experimentation aspect. Agile is about evolving the product with iteration. So agile focuses on the iteration part of it, lean focuses on the learning during iteration part of it, and design thinking focuses on people and problems and iteration along with it. It's just the sharper focus that one does over another. But otherwise, they're all striving to build great products. That's pretty much it. So, any questions you have?
We have one question from Vivek.
Okay.
This question is, in which stage do we find the cost of building a feature? And also, how do find the I think his question is not. So he's saying that if we, how do we find whether to drop a feature due to the higher cost? So his question is around the cost.
It's a how if it is very costly, you can't build it, isn't it? So you have to drop it. But you have to, if it is a very important feature, if it's an important capability for the customer, you have to find a workaround for that. So that's pretty much how I'm able to answer. I don't think this is very useful, but without the contextual scenario, I wouldn't be able to answer this. And it's also a discussion you have with whomever you're building with. What is more cost? And if you drop it, what is the opportunity cost? What are you trading it off for? What is the risk? Are questions you need to ask. This is usually something your mentor will be able to guide you for the specific scenario. So even then, whatever I say will be less useful than what your mentor guides you with in the specific scenario. Sorry, but that's an honest answer.
He said thank you. So any other questions for Vidhya? I think there's no more question. Thank you
Okay.
for a great presentation. I fully enjoyed it, and I hope our students enjoyed it too.
I sure hope so. With no questions, I should either be delighted or worried now. We'll see. Thank you, everyone, and all the very best.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good night.